All right, guys, let's solve this question. So this is a break-even or an indifference analysis between a levered firm, so that means a firm with debt, and an unlevered. So let's read the story. So essentially, this firm does not have any debt currently, but it's considering changing its capital structure, where it goes from being only equity funded to having a little bit of debt. So an unlevered firm, remember that means a firm with no debt, has 80,000 shares outstanding with a market value of 3 million. So if we were to break that down, 3 million divided by 80,000 shares, the market value of their common shares right now is about $37.50 per share. The firm decided to change its capital structure by issuing 1,125 new par value bonds, each with a face value of 1,000. So they're issuing this many bonds at par, right, with a face value of 1,000, which means they're going to raise, if I do 1,125 and it's at par, so I'm going to raise $1,000 per bond, I'm going to raise $1,125,000 in debt with a 5% coupon. So I know that the cost of this debt before tax is 5%. Using the proceeds from the newly issued bond, the firm will repurchase shares. So we're changing our capital structure. It's not that we need more money. We just want to change where the money is coming from. So now I'm going to use this debt to buy back shares, and I know the shares cost $37.50. So 1,125,000 divided by 37.5, they can afford to buy back 30,000 shares. So if we summarize the two options, they can stay unlevered, where they would have 80,000 shares. They would have no debt, so their symbol for debt we'll use is B, 0. It says to ignore taxes, so their tax rate is 0. So their earnings per share would be the EBIT divided by 80,000 shares. There's no debt, so there's no interest, and there's no taxes. Or they could take on some debt and become levered, where they would have, I'm going to take 80,000 shares minus the 30,000, so they would have 50,000 shares outstanding. They would have debt of 1,125,000 at a rate of 5% per year. So their earnings per share would be their earnings before interest and tax minus the interest, which would be the debt, or the rate, times the debt. I'll write out a formula in a moment. And there's no taxes, so we don't need to take away the taxes, divided by the number of shares. Remember that the formula for earnings per share that I'm using here is the earnings before interest and tax minus the interest, so minus the debt, the cost of debt multiplied by the debt, multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate, but in this case there are no taxes, so I'm not doing that part, divided by the number of shares. And the question is, we're looking for the indifference point, right? So what is the break-even EBIT? So at what point for earnings before interest and tax would these two be equal? Well, all you need to do is set them equal to each other, right? So if we do, I'll set my EBIT as X. So if I do X over 80,000 equals X minus the interest on the debt times 1,125,000 divided by 50,000. Okay, now as far as solving this algebraically, so I mean, we just want to expand and cross multiply. So we're going to multiply the 50 here, the 80 here. So we have 50,000 X equals, I'm distributing the 80 into all of this. So 80,000 X minus, if I do 80,000 times 5%, 80,000 times 5% times 1125000, you get 4, how many zeros is that? 4.500, it's like 4.5 billion basically. Okay. And then we clean it up. So we send the 50 over, we'll send this over here. So I have 4.5 billion. That's a weird looking 5. 4.5 billion equals 30,000 X. If I divide this by 30,000, I get 150,000. So if the EBIT is 150,000, these two would have the exact same earnings per share. Okay. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and good luck.